Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My name is Liz Egan, and during the school year, I teach creative writing for the English department here at Millsaps College, and I direct our Writing Center and our Center for Academic Success. But in the summer, it's my great pleasure and privilege to be the director of the McMullan Young Writers Workshop. The McMullan Young Writers Workshop was founded in 2015 as the vision of writer Margaret McMullan, who wanted to create a space for high school students to come together with peers who shared an interest in creative writing and self-expression that they might not otherwise have had the opportunity to enjoy. We are partners with Millsaps College, of course, and also with the Eudora Welty Foundation, whose partnership we take wonderful pleasure in. They are the executors of the Scholastic Arts and Writing program for the state of Mississippi, and many of the young writers in this room attending the workshop are gold, silver, and honorable mention winners in that contest that we just had this past year. The students here tonight come from near and far. There are several here from the Jackson metro area and environs. We also have students with us tonight from Tennessee, Alabama, Louisiana, and even Virginia. So before we get started with this evening's program, I wonder if we could just give a warm welcome and congratulatory round of applause to our young writers for their accomplishment. We also are delighted to have this evening with us several of the faculty in the McMullan Young Writers Workshop, and one of whom, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to, Shalanda Stanley's birthday is today. I won't make us sing to you again, but we really appreciate the time and talent that the faculty in the McMullan Workshop share with our young people. So this evening, the students of the McMullan Young Writers Workshop and I are thrilled to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Maurice Carlos Ruffin. Maurice is the author of The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, which was published by One World Random House in August 2021. It was a New York Times Editor's Choice, a finalist for the J. Ernest Gaines Award for Literary Excellence, and longlisted for the Story Prize. His first book, We Cast a Shadow, was a finalist for the PEN Faulkner Award, the Dayton Literary Peace Prize, and the PEN America Open Book Prize. It was longlisted for the 2021 Dublin Literary Award, the Center for Fiction Prize, and the Aspen Words Literary Prize. The novel was also a New York Times Editor's Choice. Ruffin is the winner of several literary prizes, including the Iowa Review Award in Fiction and the William Faulkner William Wisdom Creative Writing Competition Award for Novel in Progress. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the LA Times, the Oxford American, Garden and Gun, Canyon Review, and 400 Souls, a community history of African America, to name just a select few. A New Orleans native, Maurice is professor of creative writing at Louisiana State University and served as the 2020-2021 John and Renee Grisham Writer in Residence at the University of Mississippi. And also, because no New Orleans biography would be complete without this final detail, Ruffin is the 2022 Grand Marshal of the Mardi Gras Crew of House Floats. Please join me in welcoming the writer Maurice Carlos Ruffin.
Thank you, Liz. We're good. We're back? Oh, we're back. Wow. Let's give a big hand to Liz again. So I guess you're wondering why I called you here this evening. No, I said I wasn't going to say that. And I was trying to decide whether to go with Tupac or that song or something else. And I guess tonight's talk is about the choices we make in our lives. First of all, it's good to see the young writers here. We've been apart for so long, an hour and a half. I missed your faces. Welcome back. So sometimes when I come to these readings and these presentations and these lectures, I sort of improvise. But recently, I saw Jesmyn Ward give a speech, and she had prepared it just for that audience. So I decided to try it myself because if it's good enough for Miss Ward, who is a certifiable genius, I'll try the same thing. But some of the writers earlier were asking about my background, and I didn't have anything to tell them, so I did bring this. So this is my name, and I just want to point out the power of the imagination. So that's my name, Maurice Carlos Ruffin. And as I said earlier, I'm not a billionaire, but if I put this thought in your mind, you know how they say, if you tell somebody don't think about elephant, they got to think about an elephant? Well, I'm not important enough to have my own building, but imagine that's my name, and this is my building because there's a big M and an A right there. So keep that in the back of your mind throughout the presentation. So yeah, I am Maurice. I'm from New Orleans. I'm the Grand Marshal of the crew of House Floats, which is probably the most important honor of my entire life. Being from New Orleans, being a part of that Mardi Gras spirit is really important. You already had this. I promised I'd answer some questions from earlier that I missed, so I just wanted to run through this really briefly. We mentioned, I think it wasn't stories. It was Jack who had a question about getting an agent and how do you get your book published. And so this was the timeline that I was talking about earlier. I had to find an agent. The agent had to like my book. My agent is a guy named P.J. Mark. I spent a year revising my first book, We Cast a Shadow. The book was published the following year. That's P.J. right there. P.J. Mark, he's a wonderful agent. Represents a lot of really great writers, including my friend K.S.A. Lehman, who was a local to the area, and many others. I see the hand claps. Yeah, go ahead and clap for K.S.A. Yeah. That's my first book, We Cast a Shadow, came out in 2019. It is a novel. It's a dystopian, sci-fi, satirical, speculative fiction horror book. This is what people have called it, the New York Times and the Washington Post. That's the hardcover version of it. It's a book about a man obsessed with his son's race. Therefore, you see the little heads, little cameos all over the thing. And that's actually an apple right there because the apple can't fall from the tree, and he's just obsessed with his son's racial identity. That's the paperback. Here's the physical copy that I brought me. And then my second book, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. The graphic designer of the book decided to strike out don't, which I love that because now you're not sure, is it don't, is it do? Well, in life, we sometimes don't know who really loves us or not. And this is the paperback that came out about 3 weeks ago. And I love this picture of this yellow house. People keep asking me, Maurice, is that your hand? I'm not a good hand actor, so it's not my hand. But getting to our presentation, I want to talk about community tonight. These are pictures I took, and I think the bookseller from Lemuria is in here. Maybe he's out there in the hall right now. But this was taken at Lemuria Bookstore right down the street. That's my best buddy's kids. That's Eli, Max, and Lucy. Oh, yeah, that's Tad right there, the guy, the geek smiling. That's his kids over here. This is my old writing group, Podunk. Christmas at my house about 3 years ago before the pandemic. This is various writers. In fact, these two ladies here were nominated for the National Book Award for their books, Julia Phillips and Kali Fajardo. I kept getting questions about how to survive as a writer, how to move forward as a writer. And the answer is always community. It's always making connections. It's always figuring out where you fit into the artistic world and tying yourself into it. And you'd be surprised where you go. Look, you couldn't have told me that I'd be on the cover of University of New Orleans magazine. My mama saw this before I saw it. She was freaking out. I was like, you know how I look, Ma? It's just my picture. She's like, but you're on the cover of the magazine. Carville, the guy that worked for Clinton a long time ago, married to Mary Madeline. Wendell Pierce of Treme and Jack Ryan. These guys over here, that's Anthony Anderson, Marlon Wayans. He was in Baton Rouge where I have an apartment at, and he invited me to his show, so I saw him on Sunday night, and he was so funny. I'm still hurting, literally. I'm not making that up. He was amazing. And he optioned my first book. He has the rights to my first book, We Cast a Shadow, along with HBO Max. So if you see a TV show and I have a cameo walking in the background, it's because of that guy right there. And here is a New York Times spread from 2018, which features many of the most successful African-American male writers of the past few years. This is son of Baldwin, whose identity was unknown until a few years ago. His real name was Robert Jones. Put out a book called The Prophets. That's him right there. This is Denal Mengistu won the National Book Award. That's Greg Parlow, won the Pulitzer for his poetry book. This is the legendary Ishmael Reed. I could go down the list, all these really important writers, and there I am cut off right here on the side. Now, in the real spread, you can see my face, but I'm kind of looking like, how did I get here? What is happening? My book hadn't even come out yet. And then one more set of pictures. This is like travel photos. This is, the book was on the front of the local paper in New Orleans. That was a fun day. I was in Brussels, Belgium. What else? This is AWP, a writing conference. This is a good friend of mine from New York. We worked together at a program called Randolph. We're up for a prize, so we're celebrating the prize. And then that's Sarah Broom, who's from New Orleans. If you heard the name, the reason why is because I mentioned earlier that New Orleans was founded in 1718, and that in 2019, when my book came out, that was the first book by an African-American from my city published on an international scale, a fiction book. And her book was the first nonfiction book published by somebody like us from my city. Her book won the National Book Award that same year. So that's Sarah Broom. And then finally here we have a picture of some of my students at LSU. This is me and my rock band. I'm kidding, it's not a rock band. That's just Tad again and our friend Amy. That's the night my book came out, the first book. That's my wife on the right side, and that's my cousin holding it. So let's get into the community a little bit. I was thinking about what would I want to hear if I was in your seat. And you have so many amazing writers who are talking to you all this week in the workshops and in the other presentations. You may have noticed it, but the world is on fire right now, both figuratively and literally. There are forest fires, there are political fires, there are social fires, there are fires related to identity, and everybody has a side nowadays. Look, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. My president was Bill Clinton. We just were like just laid back. Things were happening. It was all right. Things were fine. Over the past 20 years, you've had in reverse order President Biden, looking at your faces, President Trump, looking at your faces, Obama, interesting, okay, Bush. And we've seen some weird things happening. Recently, we saw that Roe versus Wade was just like a baseball bat hitting a ball out into the outfield, never be seen again, over the fence. It's gone, disappeared, just like that, right? We have the war in Ukraine. Your parents are like, why is gas so much money right now? I put some gas in my wife's car the other day. It was $99.77. I mean, it's going down a little bit now, but still, kind of crazy, right? I'm curious, is anybody in this room somebody who was born in like the 40s or 50s, just out of curiosity? Okay, we have somebody, class of 66, is that right? Yes. Okay, 44, all right. So somebody who was born during the time in which the government said, we're going to make sure that all these soldiers coming back from the war can get an education through the GI Bill. If you were somebody who went overseas and fought for a freedom against Germany and Japan and other countries, they say, you know what, we're going to cover all your expenses. You want to go to college? We got you. You want a house? We got you. Those kinds of things are way in the past. So creative writing is a very odd career choice. I mentioned earlier that I'm a former corporate lawyer. Part of my job was to represent the gigantic villainous robots of the universe. Cigarette companies, gun manufacturers, oil companies spewing pollution into the water. It got kind of old, but it paid really well. If you work under capitalism in certain situations, your material needs are never going to be questioned. You can afford your house, you can afford your car, you can afford all kinds of things. The life of an artist is not always a life where you're assured to make a living for yourself. First of all, is writing even a career? Earlier I had the students raise their hands, the young writers raise their hands, who was poets and who was writers. Let's try it one more time. Who writes poetry in here? All right, a few people. Who writes fiction? All right, okay. Any nonfiction? A few people. Any brave souls trying like a screenplay or a play, like a stage play? Quite a few hands, all right. By definition, a career is something that offers stability, dignity, and status. My old career offered all three of those things with no problem. If I went into a courthouse wearing a suit with a bow tie or a vest, people knew who I was, and that was all there was to it, no questions. I could go through the security line, I could go into the judge's chambers, I could pass the bar. The bar is that thing in the courtroom where if you're not a lawyer, you can't go past it. I could go up to the judge, shake their hand, have a conversation. How's it been going? I haven't seen you in a while, that kind of thing, right? By Southern standards, a corporate lawyer makes an obscene amount of money. Now, by Northern standards, it's not so much. My New York friends would laugh, like, that's all you're getting right now? Ha, 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 you should move to Chicago or New York or San Francisco. But it was still pretty good for the South, because things are cheaper in the South, even gas most of the time. Now, some of you out there are from wealthy families, and that's not a problem, for the most part. The rest of you are middle class, which is sometimes code for broke, is that you have no money at all. But it's also code for rich sometimes, because sometimes you don't want to say you're rich. And yes, a few of you are quite poor. But maybe in America, you don't know it. This is a nation of equality. That's what our standard is, right? Here, we're all middle class, because we don't judge you by the amount of money in your account or your parents' account. And frankly, we have no word for poverty. I just said the word poverty, but, well, when people say that they're poor, we don't really hear them. Most of you have been to church at some point in your life, and many of you are frequent churchgoers. Whether it's Christianity, or you're Muslim, or Buddhist, or Jewish, most religions preach looking out for people who don't have things. Often in our political spaces, though, it's the exact opposite of that. It's the idea of every person for themselves, every man, woman, child, non-binary person. We're not going to watch your back. In America, a land of individualism, it's your job to watch your own back. Mothers don't tell their children in our country that they're poor because poverty is a curse in a land that has been built upon currency. I know people from places like Sao Paulo or South Africa or South Korea. There's no shame in saying you don't have any money. We can't afford that. Try saying it here. Try being the one kid in the class who gets that free lunch in the cafeteria. White-collar jobs, architect, banker, a manager of some type, an administrator, the person who works for the city in one of the higher offices, like literally like second, third, fourth, fifth floor up. Those jobs offer dignity. They require pantsuits and skirts, suits, and even if the office is business casual, your shirt better know what an iron is. You're not going to last very long. But writers are not subject to dress codes. Nobody expects a writer to wear a certain uniform, a tuxedo or a sequin dress. In this line of work, you can wear whatever you want to wear. You can write at home, you can write in the coffee shop, you can write in the parking lot outside of school after classes are done. The fashion police don't have jurisdiction over you in most of those venues. The trade-off is that nobody's going to call you sir or Mrs. or whatever honorific will likely be out of favor 10 years from now. To be a writer is to be somebody who has a certain level of invisibility in a capitalist economy. I'm not saying that capitalism is bad. Just making some points. What is status but a substitute for the word power? If you have the right kind of status, you can enter any room. I didn't put this in here, but I actually had forgotten about it. So there's something called Essence Festival in New Orleans. It takes place every summertime. It is a celebration of African-American culture, music, scholars show up. They take over the convention center, the Superdome, many of the restaurants. It's an amazing thing. And pretty much anybody who you've ever heard of, whether it be in politics or in entertainment, comes down to the city. I mean, I've seen everybody at that event at some point or another. From Kanye West to Rihanna to Beyonce, Chris Rock, pre-slap Chris Rock. But 2 weeks ago during Essence, I got a text from a friend of my family's, and he was like, hey, do you want to meet the VP? The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And my wife was on the text chain, and I was kind of like, is this some kind of joke? But of course, it wasn't, because this person is very tied into politics. Long story short, I got to go to the convention center. She had just been talking to see, not Nene Leakes. I always get her name confused, though. But she was talking to somebody on stage. After that, she goes in the back, and there's a meet and greet photo line, and I'm back there, and I meet the vice president. The vice president, the president, the mayor of your city, most celebrities have a certain status level that allows them to go wherever they want to go. It's like a key to the city that you live inside of. Writers are built different. Writers are often attuned to an internal compass. Yes, you do want to have success. Yes, you do want to be recognized for your talents and abilities. But really, when it comes down to it, it's about the word on the page. It's about creating things that make you feel good inside and that make the world a better place. Yeah, we're admired when people know who we are, but lacking a uniform, people often have no idea who we are until they read our work. We're not chefs with those weird hats. Anybody see that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, with Raccoon? I see Story saw it, the big hat with the raccoon under it. We don't have those. When people recognize us, sometimes they get nervous about that. Oh, you're a writer. Interesting. After all, we're observers first and foremost. We want to look at things rather than be looked at. We notice details, we notice people. You notice my pink kicks, right? You trying to describe this night? He was wearing pink kicks. We catalog everything. If you chew with your mouth open during dinner, I'll write about it, trust me. Sorry, not sorry. The other day I saw a post by this writer named George Saunders. Amongst literary writers, he's like a kind of a heroic figure. He's a writer and a teacher, and he was talking in his post on his email, it's like a Substack email, about how he has to hustle to make it. He teaches at one of the most prestigious universities in America. He writes the kind of books that presidents, like Obama, put on their must-reading list. He didn't make Trump's list. I'm sorry to say these names out loud over and over again. You know, Obama and Trump. People are sensitive right now, but these people exist and these words exist, right? When I say right now we're sensitive, what I mean to say is in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last 25 years, the last 100 years, the last 1,000 years. By nature, we're sensitive. We're always fighting over something. There's always more than one side to every argument. People are often willing to fight to the last breath for those things. It makes us who we are. And it's part of our job as writers and poets to take note of those attributes. And that's what I want to talk to you all about, especially the young people in this room and online, about your place in the world, your place as a creative person who is a part of this universe and this society, this civilization. By Saunders' admission, George Saunders, he hustles. He teaches and is beloved by his students, as far as I can tell. He writes fantastic books, and I use that descriptor advisedly, both in the genre and superlative sense. And he receives good advances and royalties. He gets his pay as a teacher, a professor. He even seems to like his working life, but he admits it can be a lot for one person to do. Now, this talk isn't about Saunders in particular, whose work I enjoy very much, but he makes a good stand-in for so many of us who write for a living. If you're a lawyer or a banker or a stockbroker or somebody who is the president of a company, money's probably going to be pretty easy to come by. You show up for work, you do your job, it'll be fine. In some countries, like Finland and Denmark and Brussels, Belgium, was up there earlier, the government gives every artist a stipend. If you play a guitar, here's $500. You're writing a book, here's $5,000. We'll cover your rent, we'll cover this. And also in a lot of those societies, college is totally free automatically. Often housing is also. I think at high tax rates, I think it's 66% in Sweden, but you get something for your input. Writing in America means we have to do a lot of things to live, to breathe. And this is one of the reasons we're not like physicians and accountants and those kind of people. I don't know a single vascular surgeon, and yeah, I know a few vascular surgeons, including one of my friend's cousin who lives right here in Mississippi, who also teaches on the side or drives an Uber on the side or bartends on the side. Imagine you catch an Uber, right? You're trying to get from your house to this place to be here a part of this workshop experience. And in the front seat is like Snoop Dogg. You know, Snoop is like driving. You're like, hey, Snoop, what's up? And he's like, oh, it's all right. What's poppin', Snoop? Well, he has to cover the insurance on his house in Malibu. So he's driving Uber to make up the extra money. That never happens. You're never going to see, Cardi B or Kendrick Lamar or the guy that made Super Gremlin driving Uber, because in certain fields, your expenses are covered. But the writer's life is different from that. George Saunders, he's one example. A lot of writers spend their time running from pillar to post. And I'm building up to a point I want to make here about how do we survive as writers in this world? How am I here right now? What makes it worth it? What makes all the hustling worth it? The occasional disrespect? Oh, you're a writer, huh? What of yours have I read? Did you work on any Marvel films? Let's ponder a world for a second where there are no stories. Not a single story has ever been written or told. No movies, no plays. You heard of stories, right? They're pretty great. Stories are wonderful. We've been telling stories for a minute. The first people, whoever existed, no, not those people. The very first people, no, not those people. Let's go back about 200,000 years to somewhere in Africa, right? You're gathered around a fire. It's the middle of the night, and there's a fire in the middle, and there's somebody telling a story. We didn't have writing. We didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. There was no papers. People were telling stories in the middle of the night. If you can imagine a situation in which you are that person 200,000 years ago, and you're very happy to hear somebody in your village tell you a story. It's no different from going to a movie theater, right? If you were in that village 200,000 years ago and there's a fire and that fire is flickering at you, you can feel the heat on your skin as they tell you a story about some ancestor or heroic figure from the past, some earth mother who helped create you. And then you go to the movies and watch Iron Man or Doctor Strange or Justice League or anything that won an Academy Award in the past couple of years. You're sitting in a darkened theater, and there's a light that's flickering at you the entire time. You can feel that heat inside of your chest. It's the exact same experience. And for you fancy kids, I mean this respectfully, you're on your cell phone with TikTok, and the lights are off. And your mother said, "Are you sleeping yet?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm asleep, Ma." And it's just glowing in your face. It's the exact same effect. What is it about us that makes us want to have this light in our face and have a story be told to us? It's one of the most innate things about us. If an alien found us, they would say, what do humans do? They love stories. They love creating stories. They love creating images. They love to hear these things spoken about. You're no different from your African ancestor in that village 198,000 years ago. It's a long time, right? We tend to think of things about decades and hundreds of years or thousands of years. At LSU, where I teach at, there's this thing called the Indian Mounds. It's these two hills that are right in the middle of the university. They're gigantic, just mounds of dirt with grass on top of them. Those mounds apparently are the earliest human-made objects in North America. They date back 12,000 years. Put it in context. That guy that used to be around, Jesus, he was around 2,000 years ago. That's a long time ago, right? The pyramids in Egypt, they're from 3,000 years before that, maybe more than that. So that's going back 5,000 years. These mounds are from 7,000 years before that. The first people go back about 250,000 years. I can imagine we've been telling stories the entire time. You start telling stories as soon as you can talk. Mama, there's a monster in my bed. Or at school, the teacher told me I did good, and look at my grade. I got an A. Maybe you got a B or a C. Over time, you develop your own writing aesthetic, the things that you care about, how you want the story to feel, what kind of vibe you want to create, what kind of heat you want to put into the world. Maybe you only write Euphoria fan fiction or Squid Game poetry, I don't know. But it's yours. Your writing is always yours, and that really means something. There's nobody else on the face of this planet that can create what you can create. They have computers like this app now called Wally. Heard about Wally? It's a little computer program where if you tell it to make a painting, it can make a painting. I see Jack nodding over there. You tell it to do a painting of an African-American middle-aged writer in a blue blazer with black lapels. It'll make 10 versions of it in the blink of an eye. There's also apps that can produce news articles. Sometimes if you go online and it's like, oh, there was a forest fire in Southern California, some of those are produced by AI. But nobody has figured out quite how to make true art using computers. Poetry, short stories, novels. They might get there, but I would argue that by that point, the computers are basically people like we are. We're not there yet. The stories that you make are only your stories. At some point, you discover the power of your writing and what it means to other people. You read a poem, and when you finish reading that poem, somebody is sitting there with their mouth open. And you can tell that they're wondering how you made those images in their mind move. Imagine, I had a student at Randolph, this is a college student, and she wrote a paper about language and psychology. And I'll give her a shout out. Her name was Kira Morris. She was trying to explain where the first words came from. And she came from a family with a history of like psychological problems, like schizophrenia and that sort of thing. And so she made an argument in this paper over like 30 pages that before we had language, we can just like do like body language and sign language or whatever, head nods. The very first person must have seemed completely insane to everybody else in their community. Imagine you're part of a tribe. Again, it's 240,000 years ago, and you are like wandering around to the next location to get some water and some food, and you sort of just kind of like make hand movements and that kind of thing, hungry, bring the baby over here. And then the weird person in your group, the weirdest person, right? Whoever that is, you know who it is in your group. He has like the weirdest shirt or the weirdest shoes. I'm not gonna point anybody out. But that person just kind of points over there and goes, "Bird!" Everybody's like, "What?" "Bird!" You're like, "What's a bird?" And then somebody goes, I think that's what we can call that thing. That's a bird. That's what writers are like and poets are like. We find language out of the ether and we give it to our communities. It's not madness. It's what makes us people. I mentioned earlier in our Q&A with the young folks, I just finished a book called Luster. I was reading this book. The writer is named Raven Lalani. It came out back in 2020 during the pandemic, and I bought it around that same time. Not at Lemuria. I think I was in Oxford when I bought that book. And I just read it. And I'm always behind on my reading because there's so many great books out there. And how do you read all the stuff? But that's just a fact of being a reader in the world. And I knew the book was great because my friends kept saying, read this book. It's a fantastic book. And I believed them, right? I know she's a brilliant writer because I believe my friends. And I read the book last week, and boy, what a book. The main character is a young black lady living in New York. She's looking for love, sure, but she's also trying to find herself as a person. The sentences are like top-level premium quality. The clarity, the dexterity, the surprise. You're reading a sentence, and you think you know where it's going, then it's like a comma. In the last clause, you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? Over and over and over again throughout the entire book, maintaining, Helena, that consistency throughout the entire book we talked about earlier. It was incredible. Now, this is not a book review, all right? This is just my thoughts about that book, about how I get excited over reading great work. I'm not a young black lady living in New York myself, right, obviously. My writing concerns are not the same as her concerns. And yet, I have to tell you, that book made me feel less crazy. To be inside of somebody else's consciousness, to hear their story told, made me feel like I have a place in this world, in a connection to people who are not like myself. There's so much beauty in writing. And her writing was so complex, it was so strange, it was glowing with possibilities. And I can say that about a lot of writers. People like Robert Jones and Toni Morrison and Deisha Philyaw, Jessamine Ward, Roxane Gay, Kirstie Lemon, Margaret Atwood, Joyce Carol Oates. I could name all these writers who are just fantastic at what they do. But my point is, great writers create these connections for us. Now, that connection is something that I can't find anywhere else. I can't find it watching cable news, MSNBC, CNN. I know there's a few Fox heads out there. I won't call you out with our friend Tucker Carlson. It's okay. But when I watch those shows, there's no connection I'm finding there. It's interesting, it's weird, it's entertaining, fine. Social media, look, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or what else? Twitter. I was on Snapchat. I'm forgetting some things that have passed. MySpace, I was on that back in the day. Napster, I was on all that stuff. It's entertainment, but there's no connection there. You see things, you hear things, you have some thoughts about it, maybe you laugh, but there's no connection there. And honestly, I rarely find it in film, and I love films. I'm a film fanatic. I watch a film every 2 or 3 days. I watch like 90 films per year on average. Some years over 100 films. I've seen all the old French films, all of the historic black and white films, the pre-code films. I know all those films, and yet only every once in a while do I find like that feeling of like, wow, I'm inside of a special space right now, and I love this so much. But in the vast majority of books, I find that same feeling. The written word is special because of the intimacy it creates. You go to the bookstore, Lemuria, or maybe that other place, Barnes & Noble, shouldn't say it too loud, and you open up any book on the shelf, and on that first page, you know that you're going somewhere really fast. The first time I read Angie Thomas's book, The Hate You Give, I was so amazed by that first page. It only has 30 words on it. She's not even like making big, long paragraphs. And yet I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this girl Star, she's a teenager, and she's living in California, and she's at a fancy school, and she lives in a rough neighborhood, and she has a cousin over here, and yada, yada, yada. And then, the first page and a half, you get all that feeling, all that connection. In a world where we walk around with all these thoughts that are darting around inside of our skulls like frightened kittens constantly, and we can't beam our thoughts into other people's heads. A good story or a good poem is as close as we can get in this world. There's a lot of beauty on earth, but stories and poetry they have their own special beauty. Stories have a monumental force to them. I've seen some of the reading lists of people like MLK and Toni Morrison and others, and they read very widely. And I would wonder, why, for example, did Toni Morrison read all of Faulkner, for example? I mean, she's a lady from Ohio, she's African American, she's writing this sort of black liberatory fiction, and yet she read every single book that Faulkner read. And when somebody asked her, she was like, because he had things to say. And she learned from those things. She would even admit that some of the things that helped her win the Nobel Prize in Literature were ideas she got reading his books. For example, I wear this shirt sometimes with this big, long word on it that I can't pronounce, but it's Faulkner's fictional county. It's like Yakupanata or something like that. And it's a place that he made up. He made this up himself for his books. He wanted to set his stories in Yakupanata, right? Well, in Toni Morrison's books, again, Song of Solomon, and we saw that earlier, Bluest Eye, Sula, Beloved, she always makes the county up. So she has total control over that space. She learned something by reading things by people who were not like her, and arguably people that she wouldn't have liked very much in real life. I mean, after all, Faulkner had a lot of good points, but he was somebody from the Deep South at a very difficult time who would have black characters in his work sometimes, and you would never really know it, but some of them were based on his own family. He had African Americans in his family. Would he say that in public? Probably not. And yet she found value in that. The stories that we read of people who are not like us allow us to expand our horizons and create the work that builds the future. I mentioned earlier that my belief is that there's only maybe 8 or 10 kinds of people in the world. We have ministers and priests and nuns. We have architects and construction workers. We have military and political leaders. We have healers, nurses and doctors. And we have the creators, people like you in this room right here, right now. When I was your age, talking to the young people in the room, I had no idea that I'd be standing here one day doing this. I loved stories back then, too. I mean, so I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s. So early 80s is G.I. Joe, Transformers. Late 80s is Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Batman the Film, 89. 90s, it's X-Men comics and Captain America, Spider-Man, a little bit of Batman. All these amazing stories being told, reading constantly and thinking, wow, if only I could have a chance to make my own stories one day. And yet, one of my favorite questions today, and there were many great questions, was, how did you get to the place you wanted to get to? I think you said that. It was this idea about how do you get to be the writer you want to be? And it's this faith. At some point, you have to believe in yourself. At some point, you have to bet on yourself. What I found in my writing life is that as long as I am moving forward in belief, things tend to work out. I quit my last law job in 2019. Interesting experience. It was kind of messy like a reality TV show, but then I just stopped, and I had no job lined up. And I had like almost no savings. You know, I got family, I got an elderly mother, what am I gonna do about this? And something just kind of said, maybe it was ancestors, maybe it was an angel, who knows? So like, you know what? So far, every time you've taken a risk on your writing, it's tended to work out. A month later, I got a call from LSU. Actually, it was an email. They had asked me to apply for the job over there back in the previous August. I had turned them down. Sorry, LSU. I had turned them down. I didn't want to teach at that time. I just wasn't ready for it. I wanted to write my next book, yada, yada, yada. So I turned them down. So I figured, okay, I had no job. I already turned that job down. They emailed me and they said, well, we haven't filled that spot yet. Do you want to be a part of this? I'm like, oh, sure. Well, there's a competitive process. You have to go against other people who have more books, more teaching experience. Maybe they're better writers. We don't know. You got to come to the university in a room like this, full of students and professors. You got to give a talk to them and impress them. We're going to make up a fake classroom with people's stories. You're going to read their stories. You have to critique their stories in front of them, in front of us, and we're going to grade you on it. If you can pass all those tests, you have a chance of being the person we hire out of the top 4 prospects. I got that job. I don't think I'm the greatest person on earth. I'm not Kanye West. I'm not like that. But I do think that because the writing is so important to me, and because I could explain what I'm trying to do as a writer, I could make that happen. So I want to shift gears a little bit. We talked about why do we write our stories? Every single writer out there has a reason to write your stories. This is my first novel, We Cast a Shadow, as I pointed out earlier. And this story is the child of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, Nabokov's Lolita, Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye, Junot Diaz's The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole, and Moby Dick by Melville, bless you. Those are books that I had read, and all those books were about outsiders trying to find their place in the world. They seemed weird on the surface, but they had these really deep souls, mostly loving characters who are just trying to do the best that they can in a sort of broken planet. Take the other ideas, like ingredients, put them in a pot, stir that pot up. Flour, sugar, eggs, cinnamon. Put it in the oven, bake it up. You got a book after a while. This is my second book, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. This is 19 short stories. I didn't want to publish this book. I know that sounds weird, but I had an offer to publish some of these stories way back in 15, and I was like, I'm not even really sure about that yet. And then my publisher, Random House, One World Random House, was like, well, you got some stories. Why don't you just go ahead and do it? And I was like, no, I'm not so sure about that. But like, Maurice, how do you work? Well, you need to have a mission and a goal. Well, remember I mentioned earlier with Sarah Broom how we were the first 2 African Americans to publish on an international scale out of the city of New Orleans. I realized that there had never been a book of short stories by somebody like me from my city, published internationally. And so I said, okay, I don't have quite enough stories for an entire book yet, so what can I do? I'm going to write stories to fit the characters I have not created yet. So for example, there's a story called Rhinoceros in here, and it's set in early June 2020 in New Orleans during the George Floyd protest, during the pandemic. So these 2 teenagers who just finished high school like a month before are trying to get to the protest. And they're wearing masks, and they've been seeing like these Confederate statues and all that kind of stuff, and they're like putting graffiti on things to like make their mark, saying, haha, take this down, that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, the interesting idea for characters. And those 2 characters in this book, one is actually a trans girl, the other was non-binary. Why do that? Because guess what? There are people in my city who are transgender and non-binary. And I'd never seen a single story like that in a book, so I wrote it. If you have a mission and a foundation, anything is possible as a creative person. I love seeing creative, like musicians, for example. Like I know there's a few people in this room who probably have seen that Beatles documentary when they're like on a rooftop and they're like trying to make their songs work properly. It's the same process for all of us, writers, musicians, singers. You go into the world, you find stuff, and you bring it back, and you try to make something. There's a blank page, there is a cassette tape with no music on it, and you push forward. And next thing you know, there's something sitting there in that spot. So I said I'd leave some time for questions, but before I do that, I have a question for all the young writers out there, not to be answered at all. This is for you personally, and my advice to you is when you have a chance, to write this question down in your personal journal or in your phone or whatever, or just like say it into an audio recorder, whatever. This is your question, young folks. Who do you want to be in 5 years? If you would have asked me that question at your age, I would have had no idea. If you would have asked me even 5 years later, who do I want to be like at that point, I still wouldn't have known that. So much of life is like being on the ocean in a sailboat with a small wind, and you're not sure where you want to go. If you don't choose a direction, that little wind is going to blow you somewhere, and probably not where you want to go. If you make a choice, you can raise that sail up, point in a certain kind of way, and choose your destination. It took me a long time to figure out that I'm a writer. I was like in my 30s. Went back to grad school at the University of New Orleans, 31 years old, did 3 years of school, had a fantastic time. From that point forward, I figured it out. The rest of my journey is writing and creating. It's making books, it's making poetry, it's making screenplays, maybe a TV show, possibly a movie or two. I want to create until I can't create anymore. And knowing that has changed my entire life. Sometimes we all have bad days. We fight with our friends and our family. There's not quite enough money. But in life, when you have a mission that you love, it doesn't hurt quite as much. And on your good days, when you make a good story and people like it, oh my goodness, your story was so great. Oh, that poem was so wonderful. Very few days can match that feeling. So keep that question and write it down and think about it. What do you want to be? If your goal is to be a writer one day, be that thing. Be a poet. Make some plays. Make some movies. You can do this. So we'll do some questions, but that's it for that part of the presentation. Thank you. So fancy.
All right, we've just turned on the microphones in-house here. If any of you have questions for Maurice, we've got a few minutes for that this evening.
Yes.
When you were giving your presentation, you mentioned the book, The Prophet, at the beginning. You said his name was what? Because I just bought that book, actually.
Okay. So the question is, I mentioned the book earlier. There's a New York picture, there's a guy on the circle, I was like, son of Baldwin, he was unknown, anonymous. His name is Robert Jones.
Really?
It's a very regular name, yeah. So that book is called The Prophet. Nope. Robert Jones came out in January of 2020. I've read that book. It's incredible. That book is truly amazing. In his mind, like he's like the combo of like Baldwin and Morrison, Toni Morrison, is one writer. And he's a friend, we text each other constantly. He's like, hey, happy Sunday. I'm like, what's up, bro? Happy Sunday. That kind of thing. But yeah, fantastic book. Thank you for the question. Yes, Lynn.
Is there something that you've ever written that you didn't publish for any reason that you liked?
Oh, things that I've made that I didn't publish. I've made many things I didn't publish. So first of all, there's my short stories. I've published between 30 and 45 short stories. I probably have 150 short stories, including like flash stories and very short stories. Some of them I lost interest in. Some of them are so old, it was as if you were to meet like your kindergarten self and like bring that self to like a dance and like, oh, this is not right. Let's bring this kid home. That'd be working, right? It's that kind of thing. With like my novel, for example, this book is 320 pages long. However, on my computer, there's another 400 pages, not inside of this book. Because for me, making a book is like sauteing something. It's like stewing something. You put the food in the pot and then you have to cook down to get really good. And that extra stuff is not necessary. The good part is like in the middle of the pain. So yeah, constantly. I think to be a writer, to be any creative person requires some lost energy, which is okay. So write too much. It's okay. It's not all like, like the next $10 million, whatever.
So you were saying how when you look at the news and like social media and stuff, you don't feel like it's no connection. So how do you keep like that sense of identity being of African American and like not feeling connected to those, like, I guess, the media and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so everybody comes from a community. I mean, it's weird because I remember like 10 years ago, the idea of like everybody having an identity was not a real thing. Just to give you a very simple example, I knew that if like I as a black man to my white friends was like, hey, look at yourself as white, they would kind of go, wait, what? Whoever says that. But like now in a lot of spaces, this idea of whiteness, blackness always comes up constantly because we're being divided in a lot of ways. But the point I'm trying to make is this. In terms of communities, know where you're from. For example, remember one time someone's like, there's no community like in the South, what are you talking about? It's like, no, wait a second. All right, so as a Southerner who's traveled around the world and up to like New York City, that kind of thing, they see us a certain kind of way, all right? And it's not only just like black folks, but there's a buddy of mine who's like a really deep, like Mississippi drawl. He sounds like Haley Barbour, the former governor. I can't do that accent, like a very deep, lugubrious drawl, right? And the assumption up north and in other places, like, not a very smart person. He's a very smart person. And I really admire and respect this person. His community is the South. Where he's from, that's a normal sound. It's like, hey, that's just Jack. Not that Jack, different Jack. That Jack sounds like that. To be somebody who's African American in the South, like, sometimes we get into a place where some of the stories being told are so negative, they block out the other stories. So we know that in this country we have issues with capitalism, slavery, mass incarceration, patriarchy, misogyny. You can go on and go on and go on. But then there's your actual community and your actual family, the non-national version of who you are as a person. I was raised in the church. I had a wonderful father who passed 3 years ago. I had a great mother, great uncles and aunties, best friends. My neighborhood was like Mayberry. It's a little bitty subdivision on the edge of New Orleans with like our own like park and like rode our bikes around. I can draw upon all my personal experiences to make my writing feel more realistic. I don't write any one-dimensional stories in which it's just like, those are all the bad guys, and they look like that, and those are all the good guys, and like that. It's always this feeling of, oh, this is the real world, and this is what it's really like. And so I guess for me, to answer your question, like what I draw upon to stay grounded, it's my actual life. Books are not the actual life, they're a version of it, and to create this version, you need your actual life. If all you do is watch television and go on TikTok, you can make some stories, but have your own adventures in real life. Meet people, have a good time. Make a few mistakes, correct those mistakes, apologize. Those things build character, they build soul, and when it comes time to write, you have something to say to people that's full of like heart and energy.
Could you tell us?
Oh, wait, one more question over here. We'll come back to you in a second. Yeah.
Do you think the three-act sort of genre, because I can't think of the term for it, is essential, required, or just suggested for a book?
It's not essential to use the three-act structure in writing, but I love it myself. Writing anything is hard. Short stories are actually harder than novels. I believe that. But novels themselves are pretty hard too. You're trying to make it easier on yourself. So like in writing this book, I was like, okay, I wrote a whole draft. I'm like, it's a pretty good draft. But what if you try to put the three-act structure in? Well, how does that work? Okay, there's an exciting incident. I got that already. It's the very first chapter. Then at the end of that, there's like an incident that sort of pushes things forward to a point of no return. All right, great. That's like chapter 6. Okay, that's act 1. Act 2 is all of the characters, all the things that have happened already come back like twice as crazy. All right, that's the entire middle part of the book. Great. Then there is the end of Act 2. There's the darkness. There's the come to Jesus talk. All is lost. They can't get past that point. Or that's probably, oh, I don't know, page 199-ish. All right, wait, no, yeah, all right. Act 3 is climax. Things have gotten heated, everybody's like in their corners, they're gonna fight to the death, one side's gonna win. That's the last 3 chapters. I don't need that, but I like that in this book. For some stories, not at all. The last story in this book is a novelette. It's 38 pages long. It follows a gay black woman who is being gentrified out of her house by raising tax levels. She's like, driving Uber, waiting tables, working at hotels, and trying to raise funds to like pay for her taxes. And the story just like following her around. It's her personality that makes you want to read the story, not the sort of structure. Now, if you go to Hollywood loves 3 acts. There's a reason why most of the writers in Hollywood use that book by McKee called Story. Not that story, but Story. But it definitely pays off in that context. But be a rebel, but be a smart rebel. Use things that help you, and forget things that you don't have to use. Back to you.
I've never read your book, and I was just wondering what was it about?
Oh, this book. Mm-hmm. So, I was trying to make a story that would mess with your heads, all your heads, regardless of your race or gender or age. So the setup is pretty straightforward. It's about 40 years from now, and the main character is an African-American lawyer in a city like New Orleans. I'm not sure where that idea came from. It was a crazy idea. And he's married to a white lady. They have a mixed-race son. And this is a future in which a lot of our sort of race problems get a lot worse. I mean, if you're black, if you get arrested for no apparent reason, like every day, it's just really bad in the book. And so this guy is worried that his son, Nigel, who's like 8 years old at the beginning of the book, who actually can pass for white. He's very light-skinned. He has like sort of, Caucasian features. He's like, all right, my son is basically safe, except the son has an ink spot birthmark, like a wine birthmark. It's getting bigger over time. And basically, if it was covers his entire face, he'd be, like my color, he'd be brown. So the dad's like, well, in this future, because of changes in technology, you can look however you want to look. So he decides to change his son's look to protect him. The problem is, the son's against it, the mother's against it, and the community's against it. So this guy makes a secret plan to raise money and go behind his family and do this thing to his son. And it raises questions about what would you do for somebody you care about to protect them? And what does our society force us to do? And what I found is, regardless of like your political affiliation or race, it makes you, it challenges you. It's like, like my black cousins are like, yeah, he getting all the crazy white folk. Yeah, wait, what did you do? Like that kind of thing. And like my sort of white liberal friends are like, that's why his wife is like an activist. Even though she's white, she's like, she wants to fight against his racism. He's a black man. And then you're like on page 185, like, wait, why should you do that? It makes us all ask questions constantly. This book is designed to be like thought-provoking and make you just kind of go, oh, I thought I was safe. I'm not safe. We're all being implicated in this project of being American society. So yeah, that's it. And the book's kind of humorous, but it's also kind of dark, kind of like me. So yeah. Other questions? Yes.
How many copies of your book have you sold?
Oh, Maurice, great question. So Maurice asked, this is my twin, Maurice. He asked, how many copies have been sold? I think with this one, it's about 32,000. With this one, it's about 7,000, give or take. So literary book, that's pretty good. My thought at first was, if I sold 500 copies, I'd be happy. Really, I was like, the book looks good, people want to like it. If my friends and family get it, and some other people around the country get it, pretty good. But it's a lot better than that. And then, with short stories, it's like an anti-short story thing in the world. People don't read short stories. But to sell 7,000 copies, and it's only like a year old, I feel good about that. And what I also know is that, if you do the job right, people come back to it every single year. So I can see on my Random House counter, it'll show, this university just bought 200 copies of your book, like in Illinois. I'm like, because they want to engage with this idea and read with themselves and share it amongst themselves. So yeah. Thanks, Maurice. Yes?
How do you maintain the quality of your writing when you have dialogue? Because I feel like when you get into especially long conversations between two characters back and forth, it feels like your writing isn't the same. So how do you maintain that same quality?
What's your name?
Anna?
Anna, great question. How do you make the dialogue pop? Dialogue is like money. Most of us can't use too much of it because we run out very fast. So what you want to do with dialogue is make sure you're only using it in the most important parts of the story. So, I mean, it's like a basic beginning of a short story. It's like a little paragraph, it's like an introduction paragraph. You know, my name is so-and-so and I go to this school and I can't stand it that we're forced to go to school all summer long. And then after that paragraph, you have her best friend show up like, you know, imaginary Anna. Why are you frowning, Anna? I can't believe this. We're here again like this, yada, yada, yada. And then maybe 1 or 2 more sentences, back and forth, that's like really heartfelt. Like the friend says, you know, it's just time to accept it. We can't go home right now. We're stuck in school over the summer. Just get over it. I got over it. And then she goes, I can't get over it. Well, why not? Well, I was supposed to travel to Canada and visit my grandmother who's sick. Now I'm stuck down here. My dad won't let me go. He doesn't like my grandmother very much. It's my mother's mother. Yada, yada, yada. Dialogue is designed to create a feeling that people are really inside of a story. And so my favorite trick is what I call no dialogue, N-O dialogue. I just did it there automatically. When 2 characters are talking, they're disagreeing constantly. If one character says, I'm thirsty, the other character says, no, you're not. What do you mean I'm not? I haven't had water all day long. You had a whole bottle of water now. Have you gotten that? I didn't forget anything. You weren't looking at me properly. That tug of war, which old timers recognize as like the Three Stooges or Groucho Marx, it produces more story automatically. Often I'll have students and I'll say, come up here, and I'll say, all right, we're just going to talk for the next minute and a half, disagreeing in dialogue constantly. And it's that exact same thing. It always works every single time. The last thing is, just don't overdo it. You know, if you feel like it's getting kind of flat, then go back to exposition, narration, setting, and in terms of how it sounds, make sure that your characters sound specific. You know, if you got 2 characters, if they're kind of similar, find some quirk in their being that makes them different. So, look, if you have 2 African-American 40-year-old guys standing here right now, you know, one of them should be like from New York City. So he talks more like this, you know, then, you know, or from Boston, from a Harvard Car, New York, you know, that kind of thing. Make sure that people have a certain sort of realness to each other. Because sometimes what happens is you have like 3 characters and they all sound exactly the same. And that's really boring for the reader as it is for the writer. One of my favorite tricks is that I have a lot of families. So often like the guy is me, and then the lady's like my wife, like one of my other cousins or friends or whatever like that. Well, how do they actually sound? What was she saying in this spot? You all have family and friends. Just hear their voices in your head. And one of my last tricks is take somebody's voices that doesn't fit at all and put it into that character's body. So in my latest book I'm writing right now, there's these ladies in the city of New Orleans, 1850. Some are free, some are enslaved. One of like the most interesting characters. She's like 4'8", kind of like saucy, and she's African American, and she had freed herself from slavery like before the story starts. But in my head, she sounds like Dolly Parton. That's insane. When you read it, you won't hear Dolly Parton. You kind of go, wow, what an interesting voice this character has. That's like a thing for you, the writer, to know. Nobody else has to know that. So just be innovative, try crazy things, and see what happens. Thank you. Yes, 1 or 2 more questions.
How was your adjustment from corporate law to being in the arts full time?
How was the adjustment? Oh my goodness, what a question. From corporate law to writing. So I was saying earlier, let's put it like this. I don't have a graph for this, but like in comics, for all the characters, they're like these bars. And the bars are like, you know, speed, power, intelligence, you know, yada, yada, yada. And for all of us in life, we start out, let's say the scale's like 1 to 10. Some of us have like a 10 for this, an 8 for that, you know, a 5 for this, and whatever. And then you make changes in your life, and that bar changes. So now the 5 is like a 7, and like the 3 is like now an 8. And I think that as a corporate lawyer, my life was flowing by really, really fast. I was traveling constantly. I was getting like, you know, free flights to San Diego, New York City, you know, meeting this lawyer, meeting this doctor, going to this event, meeting these corporate people. And it was just like bam, 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 bam. And I would kind of like go home at night or go to the hotel room after the event. And I'm like sitting there like watching the hotel TV, eating the hotel dinner. you'd be like, man, this is so whack. This is so boring. I mean, I know it seems glamorous. There's pictures on my Facebook page from like 15 years ago, like in a suit, at a party with some friends like this. But there's nothing in there. Versus creating something that I really believe in and love. And meeting writers and other people who are creating things and kind of going like, wow, what an amazing soul. You have that exchange of energy. So in terms of like the actual switch, there was some challenges. I mean, look, if you are a corporate lawyer, you're making like that much money. If you're teaching, you know how people treat teachers, right? There's always some gap in how we treat, teachers, professors, right? It's like there was that, I had a plan for that. There is, like insurance. For a second, I had no insurance. I have it now, thank goodness. But also in the long term, I think that it's like jogging. I jog a lot, not so much because it's hot right now, but if you know where you're going, and you know how long the distance is, you can run that distance. If you say, Maurice, you're gonna run a mile, no problem. You say, Maurice, just run with no mileage. I'm like, when am I gonna stop? I'm not gonna tell you. I get tired a lot faster. Knowing that I'm a writer means that I can take the challenges of my life and sort of, it's gonna be fine. This book is gonna be done in a year, it's gonna come out in 2 years, great. More short stories, more poetry, more whatever. So yeah, now when I'm sitting in a hotel room like this tonight, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I like this a lot. This is way better than 10 years ago, whatever like that. So it's been a great transition. I have no regrets at all. And I would go to law school again too. So I learned a lot about the world myself through that process of being a lawyer for 16 years. Yes. What's your name? Brittany.
So you talked about community. I wanted to know, what did your community look like before you got published?
Oh, great question. So, I mean, that's literally a big part of it right there. What did my community look like before I got published? So, a bunch of amateur writers in New Orleans started a writing group in 2007. This is a bunch of them right here. It still works good. Yeah, that's a bunch of them also. And none of us had published anything at all. But we really like being around each other as much as possible. We would have like a monthly meeting, like read our new stories and poetry together. Oh, what a great job you did there. Wow, wonderful. Like being like our own like timekeeper, just making us feel really good, So, I mean, like just an example. So Charisma, her first book comes out next Valentine's Day. And it's called I'm Always So Serious. She's smiling right there, but she's very serious. And it's a great book. I'm sure it's going to do fantastic, win some prizes. Let's see, Tay put out a book, and the second book's coming out very soon. Emily put out a story recently. Denise moved to Hollywood. She's like trying to write screenplays and do that kind of thing. She writes travel literature. She flies around the world writing essays about places she travels to. He's at LSU, teaches at LSU. She's writing a book, 2 books. One is her mother wrote a book and died, so she's putting her mother's book out, writing her own book. That's Kayla Andrews. So now we're like in this place we have seen like our lives get better. We have a dream, we like to make that dream come true. So we have to find each other first. Like in any great team story, the Avengers or the X-Men, Justice League, or whatever it is, you have to find your people. And it takes effort. They won't find you. For like the first part of the 2000s, like 99 to like 2007, I had no community at all in writing. I go to a coffee shop, I don't know where all the writers at. Couldn't find them. And then one day I saw an ad that somebody put up. She got a picture. Her name was Amy. She's like, we're going to be in the French Quarter tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Come hang out. Writers. And I went to like Tad. I texted him. I was like, where Tad at? Okay. Like, Tad, is this like some sort of like setup? It's like murder us in the French Quarter? And he was like, well, if we got to go, we'll go together. Went together, started writing. So yeah, it's amazing to be trying to be something and then become that thing to other people at the exact same time. So find your people. It's really important. Thanks, Brittany. One more question.
I have too many questions, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Preston, and so you mentioned that you have several stories about members of communities that don't typically have voices, such as gay women, non-binary people, do you do anything to write from the perspective of them, like, read queer literature or have friends or watch TV shows or just anything? Where does that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important as a writer to read work that allows you to bring people into reality as much as possible. Like, I feel like in the old days, people were like, well, I'm a white writer. Here's this one black character. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. But it's like, all right, there's two things happening there. Like, how much do you know about that community? Like, have you read the works by those writers? And are you imbuing those characters with their own unique consciousness? So that for me, look, I've read many books about all these various topics. Feminism, gay history and rights, transgenderism. I listen to podcasts. I listen to counter arguments. Like, I'll go on to I don't know, who's that little guy, Ben Shapiro. I'll go to his podcast. Ben, what do you say about these people? Meg, what's her face? And they're making these arguments. And so I'm trying to get like a 360, like a round view of what that person's life is like, so I can feel their pressures. You understand? And look, to a certain extent, the vast majority of us are marginalized in some way. I mean, it could be a physical disability, for example. We can't see it, but you have it. Maybe you grew up really poor. That's something that's in the back of your head your entire life. And so we all have the ability as people to make those connections. I think the problem comes in when the writer is not trying to make those people seem real. So another basic example is, there's a book called Where the Crawdads Sing. That is the most successful novel in the past 20 years. Personally, I like the book. I think it's a very well-written book. The black characters are like cardboard. Like, they're like that thin. And that's a flaw of that book. Now, does it make it a bad book or a terrible book? Well, that part's not so great, but the story is very interesting. And it's told in a pretty exciting way. And we can debate what that means. But if I'm talking to her myself, Miss Owens, hey, Miss Owens, in your next book, will you consider reading about more of black history, black characters, black communities? You have any black friends? Interview somebody, pay somebody to do something like that to make it feel more realistic. There is a certain privilege in not having to ask those questions. And for me personally, I didn't want to make a book that presents people like that and doesn't try to make them feel like real people. You had a second question.
Yes. So that was a really good response also, but do you ever write anything and just think that it's not necessarily original or it's already been written before? And if so, how do you handle that? Where do you move on from there?
Oh, great question. You said it's Preston. There are no new stories. As the old timers always say, there is nothing new under the sun. Whenever I'm like, oh, this story is so fresh and original, and then a year later, read them 1946, this is my story. The thing that makes stories unique is that you wrote them yourselves. I could go on and let's see. Okay, Shakespeare. There's not a single original Shakespeare play. He was reading Marlowe and other writers from before him, and taking their entire plots and their characters, and making his own version of it. Look, the Bible, I'm a Christian, but the Bible is mostly Mesopotamian stories. The idea of Noah's Ark, that's 2,000 years before that story. That was from way back in the old days. The Akkadians and the Assyrians, there are no new stories. What you have to do as a writer is make the story feel like it is present in your time period, or whatever thing you're trying to do. So if I'm writing some futuristic sci-fi story book set 1,000 years in the future, it's going to have probably cancel culture in it, right? It's going to have people in one nation fighting like dogs, red versus blue. It's going to have all these things we talk about, think about. That just feels like it's from right now. So never plagiarize, right? That's just take somebody else's words, copy and paste it, and put it in your book. But read their books and kind of go, I can make a way better version of that myself. I've done it many times. I've read stories and kind of went, let's try this. Okay. Type it up, send it out. I would have read a story. Maybe her readers like her story, but my readers like my story. So just put it out there and see what happens. There's no new stories. Is there a third question, Preston? Anybody else I missed? I didn't want to miss anybody. Yes, please.
I just wanted to say something because I know that you said you was Christian, so I just wanted to give some encouragement and to say to remember that it's not about religion, but it's about relationship between man and God.
I love that.
Where God is perfect and man is imperfect, and where He loves us, and we learn to love Him.
Oh, bless you for that. What's your name?
Alexis.
Alexis, thank you for that reminder. I agree with that, this idea that we as people are imperfect and our Lord is perfect. I lean on it. Look, some days I don't know what I'm doing, and like, you know what? Because I believe it's going to work out eventually. And that's where the faith comes from. And again, I was raised in the church, so I can't avoid that. And I've had periods of like being like, religion, that's silly. But the more I think about it, the more I believe. So I don't have all the answers.
I don't know if I think it's religion, because religion is how man reaches God, but Christianity was how God reached man through
I like that too.
Right.
That's good.
I know I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and I
That's
sin
very
every
good.
day. So,
Yeah. I mean, I like what you just said, though. I think what we miss in a lot of our current conversations, look, we often say, oh, you know, people in that religion, they're doing these things that are so bad, like to women, for example.
can't judge them,
and to
we
be
have the
people. But I think what you said is really important. When we're thinking about things like that, religion is like a kind of philosophy. You're trying to find answers. I think trying to find answers is really important. And so whether that's religion or philosophy or whatever that thing is for you, if you're asking questions, that will get you to a better place in your life. And so if somebody tells me that they're from kind of like the, you know, some faith, I'm like, what's that all about? I'm like, you know what? It doesn't even matter. They're trying to get answers. And most people wouldn't have conversations about like what their thought process is based on. Somebody said that all religion really is a way to get a community to agree on principles. What's important. So I think it's important for people like you to write about that.
I write about I was bullied, so I write about my past pain.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's like God speaks to me at the end of it. I thought I wrote all of these, like, how I felt, and at the end, like, He speaks to me. Like, I wrote a poem called Understand, and I was just like, how can you understand God? I was like, I'm so imperfect, and I do this, and then this song by Chandler Moore popped into my head, and I just wrote it. And it was just like how Jesus felt everything that we could ever feel, and that He understands our emotions and our pain. And I think I learned from my own poetry.
Just say, Alexis, keep that same energy. You need that in life. You'll do well, and keep writing into that same space. I think that often one of the things people don't know about being a writer is you can take the challenges of your own life, the things that make you feel a little tight in your chest, and make it into like a poem or a story. And a lot of times it makes you feel better.
I never thought I would be a writer. It was always my sister.
Yeah.
I was in the car one day, and I started thinking about how everybody always called me weird because I didn't talk to anybody. And I was like, you know what? How am I weird when I'm me? You're you, I'm me.
I love that. How am I weird when I'm me? You have to accept that. Look, I'm wearing a 1950s, you know, jazz pop jacket, 2022. It's okay. Just be yourself. Always.
I can't read, I can write poetry.
All right, did I miss anybody else? All right. Thank you so much.
Again, so much to everyone here in this room for joining us, and thank you to all of you online as well. For those of you who are here this evening, we also have the Maria books on site, and I bet if you asked real nicely, Maurice would sign your book for you. The Maria books is selling books just out this door over here. Thank you again so much, everyone. Thank you, Maurice.